Hi everyone, the purpose of this video is to give you a very quick overview of collaborative documents for seminars, why they're a good idea, what kind of activities you could run and how to run them. So as far as collaborative documents for seminars are concerned, what is a collaborative document? This is an online document that could be like a Word document, a spreadsheet, presentation, a drawing that multiple people can work on and contribute to at the same time, simultaneously. Many academics are familiar with these types of documents. Sometimes we use them for grading people's work, for submitting grades into a spreadsheet, or also collaborating on writing a journal article and things like this. Why use these for seminars? Well, they are a great way for students to work together in seminars without the need to share stationery, sit close together. So it's a good activity considering some of the social distancing conditions that we're having to face in our classrooms right now. But also it produces an artifact. The document that's produced collaboratively, it can be added to each week. And of course it can be archived for revision or coursework preparation later on in the year. Here are a couple of examples of the type of activities you could run in a seminar using collaborative documents. First of all, the most obvious one really is collaborative note-taking. You could screen a video in your class and you could ask the students to take notes in a collaborative document. You could also screen a short excerpt from a lecture if maybe. Students could be asked to read a journal or a newspaper article, and again they could be asked to take notes on that journal article or write a review of a book chapter or summarize the journal article. A popular activity is getting students to think about summarizing a journal into a tweet or just a few kind of sentences. It's also useful for lectures. You can ask students to work on a collaborative note-taking document for lectures. You provide each week a blank document and ask students to kind of contribute to that week as you go through your lectures. Another possible exercise you can run is peer grading or review. So you could ask students to mark up another student's essay or an example essay, and also ask students to provide feedback and grade the essay, and they could do that collaboratively through a collaborative document. You can ask students to build a class presentation, so each student or a group of students in the class could be responsible for an individual slide in a presentation document. Very quickly the students can work on their slides collaboratively, and at the end of the class you could get the groups or the individual students to present back to the group. And of course there's no need to chop and change between lots of different presentations because they've all been working on the same collaborative document. You can also use collaborative documents for getting students to build mind maps or flow diagrams or systems diagrams collaboratively. You can use drawing tools either in presentation software or Google Drawing for students to kind of collaboratively work on a conceptual diagram. And again, this can be used for presentations at the end of the class session as students present back to the group their drawing or their diagram or whatever they've been working on. The first example we are going to look at is a Word document that I've saved on my LSE OneDrive. I'm just going to sign into my LSE OneDrive now. And I'm going to pause this whilst I do this. So I'm now logged into my OneDrive. I'm going to go into this folder that I've created called Collaborative Documents. And what we can see here is I've got a collaborative Word document, and I've also created a presentation as well that we're going to look at. Here's the collaborative document. This is a typical exercise that I set in my first years on GY 120. It's about writing for the Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology. I give them an excerpt talking about seagrass and carbon sequestration, and the first task is to highlight some of the problems with the language and why that might not be appropriate for a kind of policy audience or a general public audience. If we want students to do this collaboratively, they need to have access to this document. To do that, you need to share the document with the students. File, share, share with people, and I'm going to change this to people in the London School of Economics with the link. So it will generate a link. I'm going to allow editing. I'll press apply, and I'm going to copy the link to my computer, copy. And then anyone with this link will now be able to access this document. The problem is this link is massive and you would need to email it to students for them to get access to the document. An easier way of doing this instantly in the classroom is to create a short URL. I really like using tinyurl.com. So in tinyurl I can paste that very long code that was just generated by OneDrive, and I can actually create a custom URL. So I'm going to call this lsegeo demo doc and make the URL. And so anyone who types in tinyurl.com/lsegeodemodoc has access to this document. And you can see here for the students, I've put this up in the document, so all they have to do is go to this on their phone or on their laptop or on their pad, whatever they're using, and then they can access this document. So this is what it would look like as you've started your class now. The students are looking at this document. Oh, I can see a student has just highlighted ecosystem services. That's obviously a phrase that maybe needs to be explained to a politician. Might not understand exactly what an ecosystem is. Okay, sequestering has now been highlighted. Again, a word that might not be familiar to many people. We've got a different color now. Maybe that's a different student who's using a different color. And you can see how collaboratively the students are marking up this document. Maybe, yeah, the use of the word alarming is probably not particularly useful for a policy document. And so you can see what's going on with this particular example. The second part of this exercise involves students rewriting the excerpt so that it's in a more kind of better format for a policy document. Again, you can see I've given the students clear instructions here that they need to spend 5 minutes on this task. So you can now see a student is editing this document. They've just replaced ecosystem services with valuable services. And this is what it would look like in a classroom. And of course you could have this up on the screen so everyone can see what's going on at the same time, or you could have instructions up on the screen and the students are just looking at their own laptops. And of course at the end of the session you can review what has happened with the collaborative editing. So this next example is a PowerPoint presentation, also in OneDrive. So you can see my folder here. I've just got a presentation.ppx. I'll open that up here. And this is a simple task again off one of my first year courses. This might be a class on climate change and what causes climate change in terms of extraterrestrial causes, atmospheric causes, land ocean causes, etc. And what you can see here is I've divided my class group up into 4 groups, group 1, 2, 3 and 4, and each one of them are responsible for a slide in the presentation. The idea here being that during the class maybe you give them 10 minutes to build the slide, and then after that each group presents to the rest of the class. So the idea being you tell the students to start building a presentation. So there's someone in group 1 here. I think there's a student online right now editing the group 1 slide, and I can see they've just pasted a diagram into the group 1 slide, so I would expect them to talk a little bit more about that diagram at the end of the class. It looks like a student from group 2 is now editing the document, and I can see they've just added they've also added a diagram which I'd expect them to talk about. And you can imagine how students throughout the next 10 minutes or so would start editing these slides, adding annotations and things like that. So this final example is using Google Docs. So I haven't mentioned Google Docs so far, but I know lots of staff will be familiar with Google Docs. You can use a document or a Google presentation just like the examples I've just shown you from Microsoft with Word and PowerPoint. But Google Docs is really useful because you can use Google Drawings. So this is a document I've created, example drawing collaboration. And right now there's a student online editing this global energy balance diagram to show, the task here is annotate this diagram to show the human and natural influences on Earth's energy balance. Use different colors for human and natural. And so you can see here they've annotated one part of the diagram, so how fossil fuels are influencing greenhouse gases. We've got volcanoes. So you can see how Google Drawing could be used for students collaboratively building conceptual diagrams, flow diagrams, annotating pictures like this one here. And of course, at the end of the session, you can have students presenting this back, talking through the reasons why they annotated it in a particular way. And they also have an artifact that they can keep for later on in the course, whether that's for revision or for coursework preparation purposes. Finally, I'll add there is one other way that you can get students to access your documents very quickly is to paste the link provided by OneDrive or by Google Docs and create a QR code. So I've got a QR code here. I can then copy and paste that into my presentation so that it's up on the screen in the classroom, and all students have to do to access that document is to scan the QR code using their smartphones or things like that. So you could use QR codes as well. So there are a few other examples I didn't get a chance to cover here, particularly the use of spreadsheets and things like that, but I'll let you use your imagination as to how you might be able to have collaborative spreadsheets and things like that depending on the content of your classes. So that's it. Thanks, and if you've got any questions, of course, please feel free to email me and I'm happy to help.